Welcome into another edition of the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast, the post July 4th edition of the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. Brian, as always, joined by Brian Perroni. Brian, feels a bit like a little calm before the storm with media days coming up in a couple of weeks. A dead period for recruiting. I guess it's quiet unless you're a member of the Pac-12 and USC and UCLA just left, but for the rest of us, it feels like a bit of a quieter period right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we joked about things happening when I was on vacation. Normally, that would have been the week that I would have taken
Yeah,
vacation. So, yeah, just the wheels fell off the college football world. I mean,
yeah,
who knows what this is gonna turn into? I think eventually we'll see I think we'll just see a completely different organization. I mean, people say like the AFC, NFC model. Yeah, I think it'll be 40 schools or so will have their own championship, and then the other schools. But this might be
I
the first domino there.
I do too. I think, I was talking with some people last week about this and, just talking about the dominoes and where this all goes. And, it was actually a couple people who are fans of the Big Ten wondering, well, how are the styles of UCLA and USC going to fit in? And it's a run first and defense and this. And I was like, nobody really cares about that, frankly. This is all a money thing
Oh
and
yeah.
getting involved with Fox. They don't care about styles and whether the
I mean,
style
plus
mixes and
SEC used to be 4 yards in a cloud of dirt too, but now
yeah.
SEC has evolved to the modern game, spread offenses, pro style offenses. So yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, yeah. Plus, I mean, it's two teams. When you play them, whatever. It's like when Georgia Tech is running when they were running a triple option in the ACC. The whole
Yeah,
the whole rest of the conference isn't going to be triple option. That week
exactly.
you're gonna have to adjust to something differently. So.
And I'm pretty sure Ohio State wasn't like a ground and pound team last year. They
No,
had
I mean, they have the best
some
receiver core that I think I've ever
Ex-
seen.
exactly. So it's
Multiple first round
you know
picks, and that doesn't even include Jackson Smith and Jigba, who will be one this year. So yeah, I do.
ex-
Yeah, they weren't just
so the styles, I mean the styles are going to be what they are and I think they'll be just fine. But yeah, I think weren't we just last week talking about, SEC media days and there's probably going to be realignment and we'll just do that all over again.
You
I
said
think
there'd be a story. So there was. I
I
mean,
think I was just kind of looking.
that was quicker than the OU Texas. OU Texas, Brent Warnerman posted something a couple days later. It happened. This
Yeah.
was like the morning, and then like 6 hours later, the Big Ten had a vote, and like the USC and UCLA like official accounts were like, "Hey, we're now members or going to be members of Big Ten." Like that was
It was
the
with
fastest moving news cycle that like I've ever seen with something like that.
It it was within 7, 8 hours, and it seemed to just be done. It kinda started with that, that tip to the Pac-12 guy out west who kinda had that story and, everybody kinda thought, "Is this real?" And then people within 10 minutes started confirming it, and it was done. So, add a little bit of excitement for sure. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Obviously, the ACC and everybody's kind of looking at them, and a lot of people talking these past couple of weeks about the direction college football is going to go. So it's going to be interesting to watch. And who doesn't need a little bit of off-season excitement and drama? I think we're just going to get realignment
Well,
every
I
summer and
who
cool up.
doesn't or Oregon fans didn't need that.
Yeah, Oregon
Now
fans.
they're left thinking like, are we in the
Yeah,
new Big 12 or what's happening? What's happening with us?
it
Are
was
we
a
in the
rough
lame duck conference? So
rough day for the guy who was on our board trolling, A&M fans about recruiting, and then all of a sudden, Pac-12 kind of implodes before
I
his
know it will.
very
It's
eyes.
going to be
So
interesting to see what kind of
yeah,
what kind of sales job the coaches do there. Because I mean, as it stands right now, that's not a power. It's not a Power Five conference. If things,
really,
let's
it's
say
not.
things stay the same sort of system, that's not a Power Five conference anymore. So yeah, I mean, is Oregon going to be able to recruit? Because this is pretty fast moving. And with the Big
Yeah,
12, with them losing Texas and Oklahoma, those other schools, I mean, the Kansas States of the world, the Iowa States, they're not really recruiting on the national championship, like win a national championship with us. So I think they're doing just fine. But schools like Oregon who are trying to say, come win a championship, or Washington even. it's going to be tough for them to recruit, especially when they don't have answers. I mean, the coaches there, if everybody seemed to be just completely caught off guard, the coaches there, what are they telling recruits? They don't know,
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that class.
And frankly, they need to figure out what kind of their next move is, because right now they're also recruiting under uncertainty. Are they even going to be in the Pac-12, or do they want to stay in the Pac-12? I know everybody kind of pledged last week that they were, planning to stay together behind that Pac-12 statement and all that. But I guarantee behind the scenes, all the schools are kind of looking at their options. And so if you're coaching, you're kind of recruiting against that as well. And what conference are you recruiting to be in, and what is your conference going to look like? No question. I mean, Oregon's got obviously the resource and facilities that they're always going to be able to sell, but um, it kind of comes at a rough time in the middle of one of the biggest months of the year in terms of recruiting and trying to close on targets before their senior year. And it does have very real A&M implications of what what does this mean for Dante Moore as in that race? And he's kind of still been looking around, and A&M and Michigan and LSU and Oregon and Notre Dame have kind of been the schools that have been mentioned for him. What direction does this go, and how does this change things? And so it's going to be fascinating to watch, and that's just one of the moves. David Hicks is another one that's kind of a recruiting
Yeah.
battle that A&M and Oregon are in the mix for. Did DJ Hicks want to play in a conference where it's kind of up in the air? And so it's going to be interesting to see what kind of the impact of this is, and where things go from here. But I have no doubt that schools will be trying to take advantage of this over the next couple of weeks and try to close in some guys, and we'll see where it goes from there for sure.
Also, okay, we got new names for the Big Ten. I mean, this has been called the Big Ten since they haven't had 10 schools in over a decade. Like they can't keep just being called the Big Ten now. With I don't how many are in it? 13 now, 15. Are there 16? Nobody
15.
Knows. I mean, what schools are even in it?
Yeah.
I had to look it up when I was like, when I saw the Rutgers. I was like, let's see how far apart these schools are. A little 42-hour drive. But I was like, all right, Rutgers is in there. I know that, but I don't. I mean, aren't some like Maryland, in the Big Ten? Nobody knows that, but
it's Maryland and Rutgers and Penn State. You kind of got three quadrants right now. You got Maryland, Rutgers, and Penn State kind of off to the East Coast. You got UCLA and USC on the West Coast now. And then you've just got the whole cluster in the middle, the Nebraskas, Iowas, Illinois, Minnesotas, Wisconsins, Indiana, Ohio State, Michigan State.
That's way more than 10 schools. They need to rename this.
Yeah.
The Big 15 isn't a terrible name, but I don't even know if that's right. I think
the Big 15.
I think they have 13 now, but I could be wrong. They could have 14. I don't know.
You know what? The SEC was smart in this front, that these schools that have the Big 12 and the Big 12. What are they? Aren't they going to be up to 14 teams at some point? So the Big 12 is kind of in the same mold at this point. All the ones
now I'm just counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right, they do have 14 now, so it's about to be the Big 16. Yeah. All right.
The Big 16. That
was riveting TV there, by the way, watching me count. I know that people are tuning in for that.
You did it pretty quickly, though.
Yeah.
But, the Big 16, that doesn't have a bad name. And then you just got to keep evolving whenever you expand. But they maybe just come up with an entirely new name.
Yeah, just the middle bit conference, dude, right in the middle, right?
Yeah, just right in the middle.
Although I guess USC and UCLA does, and Rutgers being in Jersey, USC, UCLA, and California doesn't exactly lend itself well to that either. So who knows?
Now the fascinating part is, frankly, it's kind of the race is on. Is USC and UCLA are probably going to get into the Big Ten before Texas and Oklahoma do.
I mean, if the timeline, if the timelines keep to what they are, then yes, that would happen before. Yeah, Texas and OU. But if this has to, so all the conferences changing is going to have to change the TV deals, and that's what OU and Texas are waiting on. Which both those schools are rich, just pay the deals, but whatever. But that's what they're waiting on. So I would almost think that this deal would become null. Although,
no question, what you kind of pointed out there about the TV deals, there's no question, and Fox, frankly, behind the scenes, they were negotiating their TV deal with the Big 10 right now, or Big 16. And so it's certainly going to have an impact on that front, and you would think on those negotiations, and maybe why there hadn't been an announcement yet, and why they were kind of waiting for this announcement to take place about USC and UCLA before they really um, decided to announce that deal. And so you're right. I think TV stuff is gonna play a huge role, especially ESPN can certainly get involved behind the scenes and make things happen on the Texas and Oklahoma front, and 2024 is certainly possible in that realm as well. Switching gears a little bit, looking we're now part of the Gig 24/7 countdown that is on Twitter. You can follow
Yeah.
along there if you need to
Yeah.
stay up to date on how many days until the season gets underway. We're down to 60 days until the season gets underway.
Less than
So
9
that
weeks. I don't know if that's a lot of time or a little
yeah,
time, but I
yeah,
mean,
it probably still feels like a lot of time for fans and all that going on. But things are going to move quickly over the next month. The SEC Media Days is about 2.5 weeks away at this point. Thursday, July 21st will be Jimbo Fisher on the podium, which should be a great day, and a lot of questions, I'm sure, about um, you know Nick Saban. I'm sure we'll get a lot of that again rehashed, and a whole bunch of other stuff going on. But from there, things are going to move pretty quickly. August is right around the corner. Fall camp um, is going to get underway soon. But we've got all these preseason rankings that are coming out now. We're kind of into ranking season. ESPN Football Power Index, and you brought up a good point that there was looking at the Football Power Index. A&M was given like a 0% chance to win out, which is crazy.
we're
At
not
least
we're not okay.
for
Hold on. We're not saying A&M's going to win out, but I mean the computer gives
yeah,
statistically A&M 0.0. So that's none, right? I mean, it
hey,
it may have been like 0.00001, whatever, but yeah,
yeah,
he gave
no,
A&M before the
nobody's
season starts 0.0% shot of winning out.
for a team that has been picked in a lot of top tens and some top fives of polls. We're not saying that the odds would be high that they're going to win out, especially in the SEC West and having to go through the likes of Alabama and LSU. But
And playing
uh,
Miami, that Miami non-conference game
and
is, I think fans
and
might
then
be, I've said it before, might be overlooking that. Tyler Van Dyke is a really good
yeah,
quarterback. I think
yeah,
24/7 just had sort of a feature on Van Dyke today about how he could end up being, being a first rounder, the third QB taken after Stroud and whoever else is, supposed to be
yeah.
the high
I
QBs
mean,
taken.
that is a game I think is gonna be an early test. I'm with you. I wouldn't overlook that either. I've done some preseason stuff, and people have asked me about that Miami game, and I do think it's going to be a challenging game. I do think A&M will win it, but do I think A&M fans should be overlooking it? Absolutely not. Speaking of Miami, they were one of the teams I think was a little surprising in those ESPN Football Power Index rankings that came out. 24/7 had a story on it as well. Um, Alabama number one, Ohio State number two, Georgia number three, Clemson number four. Nothing really surprising there. Notre Dame number five, Michigan number six,
Okay,
Texas
okay. So
number
all of those, yeah,
seven.
all of those returning,
Yeah,
and then Texas, who
yeah,
5-7 last year's now. The
5 and 7
computers have them now the number 7 team in the country. They
team
have
in
a
the
one
country.
percent a 1% chance to win out. That's good. What do they have
um,
to win the conference? I don't think. Oh, I don't have a. Oh, win the conference. They
now
have
you,
a 39.8% chance to win the conference.
and here's my thing, right? Like, so just finishing out the rest of the rankings, and we'll get back to that in a second. Oklahoma, right behind them at number eight. Then Miami, then LSU, then Auburn, then Texas A&M. Okay, so there's a lot of to dive into this, but starting with Texas, much like A&M, they I think everybody kind of assumes that Quinn Ewers is going to be the starter um, and beat out Hudson Card. He's yet to even start a Division I college football game. And so, if you want to talk about quarterback uncertainty, A&M's choosing from Max Johnson and Haynes King, both guys who have experience playing. Obviously, Haynes King a little less than Max Johnson does, but A&M has an experienced starter that has had success in the SEC. Um, and so, if the point with A&M is, well, they've got to figure out the quarterback position. Well, A&M has experience and depth at that position, and so and they have some question marks on defense, but I also think they have a lot of guys back like Antonio Johnson and still a lot of guys on that defensive line that have seen some time, and they do have some guys to replace. There's no question, but there's a lot of talent there. The secondary is obviously a big time strength with Damani Richardson as well back and Edrin Cooper among the linebacker group. So I think the defense will ultimately end up being fine, but several head scratchers in there. Auburn is another head scratcher. Obviously, Zach Calzada is now over at Auburn. I don't know what Auburn's going to
Well,
do
yeah.
at the quarterback spot.
I mean, Calzada's getting a lot. I mean, he's getting hyped up as possibly being the guy. Okay, yeah, okay. Zach Calzada beat Alabama. He had the game of his life to beat Alabama, and
Yeah.
that should just be his highlight reel. For the rest of his life, he should show that. Outside of that, I mean, Zach Calzada last year was, I mean, just to be kind, was not good. About as kind as I can put
average
it.
to not good.
Yes, yes. And I mean, so and A&M had no downfield passing game, and I mean, I know the line and the receivers were some part of that, but I think it's just weird to see Auburn ahead of A&M. Okay, now again, these are computer rankings, so it's not. I mean, people are going to say, "Oh, ESPN hates A&M." It's not that; it's the computer that's spitting these out. And if let's just say the transfers went out, well, Max Johnson had a better year. He beat A&M, so it's just weird with what A&M returns and what Auburn returns. I mean, it's nitpicky in the rankings, but yeah, it's just odd that they would be, the computer would have them one spot ahead of A&M in these rankings.
No doubt, and even looking at a guy like Devon Achane doesn't. It feels like I expected him to get mentioned a little more this offseason than he really does, but just a dynamic weapon in the backfield. And I know, obviously A&M's got to replace Isaiah Spiller, but they have a pretty darn good option there to replace him in terms of the running game. That running game's not going to skip a beat.
No,
And
I
as
mean,
we
what
talked about last week,
Leighton Robinson is getting preseason All-American,
yeah,
honors from people. He was ESPN had him as a first-round pick, so him, and then obviously Bryce Foster, Reuben Fothery coming back, and then you'll have to figure out the other two. But yeah, that's I mean, the line. Okay, the line is going to have its fair share of struggles, but looking at the rest of the SEC, A&M is in better shape than almost anybody. Everybody's going to have struggles on the offensive line. So yeah, I mean, A&M, the ones that have them, some people have them at 2 or 3, early in the thing. That's a little high, but
yeah, a little high.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, 12 seems really low, especially behind LSU and Auburn. Now, LSU did beat A&M last year on one of their down years, so I guess you can't complain too much. But and then Texas at 7. Now, yeah, Quinn Ewers is coming. Ewers did not throw a pass last year for Ohio State. They do have Bijan Robinson, Xavier Worthy, and some good receivers, but their defense is questionable. And it's a team that was 5-7 last year and lost to Kansas. I'm not trying to rub in the Kansas loss, but a team that's 5-7 and lost to Kansas is number 7 overall in the country. They're ahead of OU. I mean, OU, I guess, lost its coach, but I mean, they're ahead of a lot of really good schools.
Yeah, and so that's kind of my question. 5-7 coming off, not even making a bowl, and kind of question marks about. They've got. You want to talk about question marks along the offensive line? I think Texas certainly has questions along the offensive line. I think they've certainly got a lot of playmakers that they can kind of turn to, but Oklahoma went out and added an experienced guy as well. Dylan Gabriel obviously comes with a lot of experience from UCF and what he did there. And, obviously it's a step up to another level, but, even looking out at the rest of the top 15 right behind A&M, Utah, Oklahoma State, Michigan State, those are 3 schools that are coming off really, really, really good years. Utah obviously has a quarterback back again, so that's going to be an interesting team to watch. Oklahoma State has been actually one of the more consistent teams in the Big 12 over the last decade or so in terms of consistent win production. And Michigan State is coming off a really good year as well. So, all three of those schools probably have arguments to be hired as well, and kind of have expectations. Utah was probably the hottest team in the country last year at the end of the year. Obviously, beat down Oregon twice, went to the Rose Bowl and had a great game against Ohio State. And so, I think expectations are justifiably high for them. But, A&M, just looking at the rest of the returning players on defense, Brian George, you've got a healthy Brian George back healthy, obviously in the secondary. And not saying these guys are going to be, but you just have a lot more depth. I was listening to Jalen Jones talk recently, and he kind of pointed out they were super banged up in the secondary in terms of guys that were actually healthy. Miles Jones is another
Jalen
guy.
Jones.
You got
Edgerrin Cooper, a
got
linebacker.
Jalen Jones. Yeah, they've got more pieces to turn to on the defensive side of the ball. So, just interesting. It's off season. It's the time to kind of banter around about rankings and all that, and everybody's kind of throwing together different predictions and what they think is going to happen. So, just thought that one was particularly surprising with schools like Auburn and two first-year coaches, or first years at their respective programs in Miami and LSU, and then obviously Texas and Oklahoma as well. So just really interesting rankings, and we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But this will certainly be an interesting one to follow. Going to touch on some recruiting notes after the break. It is a dead period, but as we kind of talked about last week as well, this is a really, really busy time with guys making decisions. A&M had a couple targets narrowed down their list last week, are kind of trending for another one as well. So after the break, we'll have several recruiting notes and catch you guys up on all the latest as A&M kind of gears up for a big month and a recruiting barbecue at the end of the month as well. Welcome back to the Gig 'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined as always by Brian Perroni. Brian, there's been a lot of recruiting news over the past couple of weeks. No commits yet for A&M. I know we get asked every week.
Was there already a commit? Did Damian Sanford, he committed by the time we recorded this last week?
Yes, I believe he had committed.
Okay.
Yes,
so
I believe he had.
Man, I thought we were going to be able to break some news.
We had
here
Damian Sanford. We broke him down on the podcast. We can do that again. I still think that was a great addition for A&M. He committed
last
6/27. So we covered him on
Monday, because he had the
we did him on our
visit.
Yep. So we did him on our Tuesday podcast. So no news since then, which I think fans have been kind of eagerly awaiting for. And again, as you and I have kind of said, I would just have some patience. It's gonna be all right. I swear. At the end of the year, it's gonna be all right. We're only in early July right now, but a couple key targets did narrow down their list last week. Malik Muhammad. Starting with him, I was out at South Oak Cliff and on Thursday, and that was kind of when he put out the announcement that he was going to be having an announcement coming up at 7:30. They're doing off-season workouts, and kind of came right after that. I had a chance to catch up with him, and
so his was what, a top three or top four?
Down to a top three of Texas A&M, Texas, and Alabama. And truthfully, with Malik Muhammad, I don't think there's anybody who really has a good sense of what he's going to do yet. He told me unequivocally that he wants to have this done and over with by the time his senior year started. And that's kind of the sense I got just being around South Oak Cliff last week, is that he kind of wants to. He's kind of getting closer to wanting to make a decision, and so um, mentioned he was very likely going to be back for the A&M pool party at the end of the month, which will be a big one because that'll probably be A&M's last chance to really make, a face-to-face impression in front of. It wouldn't be a shock to see him go back to Texas as well during that final week and Alabama. I could see him making stops at all three, but he's coming off a visit to Texas A&M, and I know there's been a lot of Texas buzz as well. But in speaking with him and the people around him, Texas A&M really put on a good visit for him as well. Continued as they have since the beginning to stress that he's a priority, that that he's right at the top of the board, and I think he's appreciated continuing to hear that, because other schools continue to kind of bring up that A&M signed a big secondary last year, and spots and numbers and all that sort of stuff, but Malik Muhammad's as high a priority for A&M as it gets, and
Also,
I do
Manny,
get the
Manny
sense there's
Muhammad
more to
doesn't.
go.
Oh, Manny Muhammad doesn't lack in self-confidence either. So I'm
No.
not sure that approach really pays off too much about A&M having some good players on campus.
Oh, 100%. And we actually did talk about that because Nick Saban, when he went out there for his visit to Alabama, Nick Saban kind of mentioned, you can come in here and start right away for us. And asked him what he kind of thought about that, and he said, "Listen," he said, I have a pretty high belief in myself, so that he
Yeah,
said for a lot of people that might be, that might be kind of flattering. He said, for me, that's kind of what I expect I
he's
should be able to do. So,
sir, that was already a given. Oh, I would have loved to see his response to Nick Saban. Like, yeah, I know. Like, that was my
yeah,
plan.
I know. Thank you. That was I had already chalked that one up to amongst the things at Alabama. Him and Jonte Cook, I know he when we were talking, he kind of mentioned, yeah, I look at Alabama's receiving core, I think I can come in there and make an immediate impact. So, those two
Dude,
are
Jonte
good friends,
Jonte
and
Cook
neither.
would have expected to start at Ohio State last year. He's got the confidence too. I love it. I'm not bashing him at all.
I love it too.
I mean, as long as it doesn't as long as you back it up on the field, go
Yeah,
for it, man. Have that confidence. So yeah, but yeah, Jonte Cook he would have gotten to Ohio State and been mad if that he wasn't starting over a trio of first round picks, man. That's
exactly.
great.
His belief is sky high, and they're two of my favorites. So it's just fun. And you know what? They always end up giving a great interview, and so it makes it more fun when they'll give you good answers. But it was interesting talking to him too. We kind of laughed about the fact that he's got one teammate now committed to A&M and one committed to Texas, and Billy Walton. And he said both are just absolutely blowing up his phone,
Oh yeah.
trying to recruit him to their school. And that, somebody had asked earlier, is Javon Thomas recruiting um, Malik Muhammad to A&M? And the answer was absolutely yes. He talked about that during the spring. And so, it's going to be interesting because I think there's more shifts to go. There has been shifts in this recruitment throughout, and so it's going to be important for A&M to really crush that last official visit weekend, because I think that's really what's going to leave the last impression on him. There's no question. We've talked about this last week that Texas has a lot of buzz right now and has had a great couple of weeks, but at some point A&M is going to kind of go on a run themselves, and they've been in a good spot for Malik Muhammad, dating back to the spring. And just it comes down to closing now, and being able to close out this recruitment as they've done a lot of times before in some head-to-head battles. And I think that's kind of where this one sits right now as well.
I think there's another head-to-head battle with the
Yep.
top
And
in-state defender coming up too.
there sure is. And Anthony Hill, he also narrowed down his list last week to Texas A&M and Texas, and is looking ahead to a official visit at the end of the month to A&M. And this is probably given
No. So
after
his
A&M.
visit is not going to be official. If I
Oh, it's
remember
not going to be
correctly, he
official.
just
That's
said,
right.
yeah, he's going to spend the weekend, but he'll still have an official that he
Yes,
can use
he will,
during the
which
season.
is
He's
big. I
used his
mean,
other four. Yeah, if he's still going to spend the weekend, then I mean, he doesn't
it
get
kind of
as
works
much. He
out the
doesn't get
same
as
way.
much food, but whatever.
Yeah, he'll be all right. He's been, and he's been down there so many times at this point. And that was the other point, made about Manny Muhammad is he's been to each school so many times, and Anthony Hill's a little bit the same way. Now it's just about he's seen pretty much everything he's going to see,
Oh yeah.
and so now it just comes down to making a decision and finding out where you want to get. But this one for A&M is a big one after missing out on Harold Perkins last cycle. Anthony Hill feels like kind of a in a way kind of a must win just in terms of being able to set that linebacker room up for the future. This is a big one, and
It's also
to
a
kind
line
of
in the sand
thank
in,
you.
in recruiting because I mean
It is
Texas
a
does
line in
have
the
momentum.
sand, and
A lot of the Texas guys, I do like what they're doing, but a lot of what has given us momentum are sort of borderline 3, 4 stars. But they did, John Tay Cook, Derek Williams from New Iberia,
yeah,
Louisiana. I mean, they did end up with some good players. So A&M needs to counter that momentum. Now, yes, A&M and Texas don't play on the field, at least for 3 years. They're not, rivals by any means, but they do recruit the same people. So A&M to get some kind of momentum back, it would be huge if they could, win out this Anthony Hill battle. Same thing with Malik Muhammad. And Anthony Hill
yeah,
has some crystal balls. Steve Wilfong and I both put him in for A&M. It was quite some time ago. Texas has definitely made up some ground, but he really likes A&M's system on defense. He loves that two linebacker system. He can play either spot. He really likes Tyler Santucci. So, A&M has a lot going for it, and we know what happens at that pool party and recruiting barbecue. The momentum that seems to come out of that because A&M it is sort of like a family, and I think last year we heard some recruits talking about that. They're like both schools had the barbecues or pool parties, so the A&M one did. You could just they said it just felt different. So A&M has that going for it, and getting him in town for the whole weekend at the end of this month. So yeah, I would say that's a must win for a number of reasons. They need him as a player,
yeah.
but they also need him for just the optics of it all.
No question. And it kind of the fun side of Jimbo came out at that pool party last year, and we talked to guys who said they were laughing about Jimbo was right in the middle of the water balloon fights and things like that. I think players just see a different side of Jimbo during that pool party, and they have really hammered it home to recruits over the past couple of weeks. Couple guys I've talked to have said, yeah, A&M really mentioned that multiple times during the visit about come back for the
Oh
recruiting
yeah,
barbecue at the end of the summer, and so I think that's where they're really gearing up to be able to build some momentum off of that. It serves as a launching point into the fall. It's kind of the last visit salvo as you head into kind of the fall season and being able to host guys for games. And so it's a big weekend, and being able to get those two guys back on campus when I think both neither would be a shock if they certainly Malik Muhammad has kind of made it clear, and with Anthony Hill too. I believe his dad was talking with Steve Wiltfong during the spring and said after we take kind of our visits in July,
yeah.
it could be any time after that. It could go deep into the fall. It could be in August. I don't think they have a solidified timeline yet. It's going to be kind of a based on feel, but I certainly think you'll see a lot of A&M start to gain a lot of momentum, and who knows? This is one of the things we've kind of talked about before. A guy like Walter Nolan came in for the pool party, and things kind of turned from there. A&M really used the pool barbecue to kind of build into towards that number one class, and things kind of took a swing at that pool party, and so
I mean, well, yeah.
um,
So one of the stories people may forget: Jacoby Matthews, LSU he
yeah,
was committed to LSU. LSU had an event on the same day. Everybody thought he was going down. Instead, he went to A&M. Not only did he go to A&M, on his way driving down or over to College Station, he decommitted from LSU. So I mean, yeah, there's
yeah,
that like fans that I understand the frustration for fans, especially as they watch other schools get commits. Last week and then yesterday, July 4th, were really big commitment days, with the official visits over for a lot of kids.
yeah,
But you've got one, look what happened last year, but also historically, Jimbo Fisher has always tried to close strong. And I mean, that happens when you're going after the top recruits in the country. The majority of them don't commit early. I mean, they just they take their time, they wait, they commit on early signing period or even to the later signing period. And that happened
yeah,
last year. So I'd just say be patient. A&M is not all of a sudden, they're not going to go from the top class in the country to number 30. It's not
yeah,
going to happen. They're not just going to fall off. This
Yeah.
it's going to be a really good class. So, like I said, patience. I know fans in general, patience is tough, and I know A&M fans have been burned in the past, but it's a different regime.
No doubt. And it's one of those things. The momentum's going to pick up. This staff is built on several elite recruiters, and so just a little bit of patience, and I think there are guys that they're certainly in good position for. Talking to some people last week, you and I have talked a lot about TJ Shanahan, and that's a guy I put in a crystal ball for him on Friday. Really like where A&M stands with him. I think a decision before the beginning of his senior year would not be a shock. I
Yeah,
think LSU and
he told me
A&M,
he doesn't have a date yet, but
yeah,
it wouldn't be
it wouldn't
surprising
be a
to see
shock.
something happen.
I think I think LSU is probably the biggest challenger to A&M on that front. I know Georgia's in there as well, and he mentioned USC and Oregon as two other schools that were starting to engage. But this is a guy that A&M's been in pursuit of for over a year and a half at this point. And when you look at guys that their personalities really seem to mesh well with Steve Adazio, I think TJ Shanahan's right at the top of the list in terms of guys that I think would respond really, really well to Steve Adazio. And he kind of mentioned that before that, he thought like he felt like I think he mentioned it to you that he felt like he cooked really well with Steve Adazio during um, his official visit weekend. And so really like where A&M stands with him. That's probably the piece of good news that I would have talking to some people last week. And would be a big one to get in the fold because I think he'd be another guy that would really embrace the recruiting role of trying to get others to join him, especially along the offensive line. So that could be a nice momentum piece, and I'd expect him to be at the barbecue as well. He's already been on campus 4 times, and so wouldn't be a shock to see him get back for a visit later this month as well, and potentially look ahead to a decision um, later this summer for sure. And so that's probably the one that I think if you look at potential momentum starters and guys that could join the class, I think TJ Shanahan's certainly one to keep an eye on, and Guy A&M is in good shape for, and just need to close it out and get him in the fold.
Oh no, for sure. I'd agree with that. And I think, yeah, him and Colton Thomason, two really good linemen, two guys that could play a number of positions. And yeah, TJ Shannon, he's lost some weight. He was 325, big old kid. I mean, he's fine playing it that way, but he's come in at
Yeah.
308 and 309 at a couple recent events.
Yeah.
So, that just shows that, he's also willing to put in the work, and I mean, just a mauler with the mean streak. So, and yeah, I mean, he's a guy that would get people excited. Actually, these days fans do get really excited about offensive line commits. I remember when I just
They
followed
do.
recruiting, I was like, an offensive lineman, didn't realize how important that was. But he's a guy that other recruits will take notice because they know he's really good, and then he wins a state championship, finishes number 2 in the country with Westlake last year. So, proven that he can, he knows how to win. So that also helps.
No doubt, and just a guy that A&M is really, really locked in on. I mean, he's guy, Jimbo Fisher's been invested in, and Steve Adazio has been invested in as well. And so wouldn't be a shock to see him in this class for sure. Other than that, it's just going to be kind of a wait and see over the next couple of weeks as guys kind of, I think guys are going to kind of take this month to either cut down lists or kind of get together with families and kind of figure out what the next direction is before their high school seasons get underway next month. But I think we'll certainly see some other guys start to line up decisions. Miles McVay is another one of note, confirmed to me last night. He is looking to make a decision on August. Let me make sure I get the date right because it was an important one. He will make a decision on August 11th. It's his mother's birthday, and so really wanted to do it on that date. And so A&M had him for an official visit last month. Another guy, when you talk about visited Oregon last month, what impact does everything that's happened with Oregon have on a guy like that? And Michigan State's another school in the mix for him as well, and so he'll make a decision next month that has locked in that date now. So another name to keep an eye on, and I think we'll get a better sense of where things stand with him as things kind of look ahead to next August, but or towards August. With that, Brian, we're going to go ahead and close this down for the week. I expect we'll have more realignment news by the end of next week as we continue to kind of say this, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more to kind of dive into next week as media days get closer and closer. It's Jimbo Fisher and the staff will be speaking at the Texas high school football coaches meetings later this month as well. I believe they're scheduled to speak July 17th, if I remember right. They're giving a lecture to the coaches on play action passing and forcing turnovers. And so they'll be speaking, and several in-state staffs will be speaking as well. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and we'll have you covered with all the latest of that and all the latest recruiting news over on Gig'em 247. Reminder, if you have been looking to give Gig'em 247 a try, today is the last day. We are running a 2-for-1 special where you can get 2 months of VIP access for just $1. Tremendous deal. The details are over on the Gig'em 247 social media accounts. So be sure to look out for that if you've been looking to give the site a try. No better time to give it a try than right now. We'll have you covered with with all the latest, and that'll cover you through fall camp as well, leading into the season. So just the perfect time to give that a try. And be sure to stay locked into our YouTube and Spotify channels as well. Be sure to give us a subscribe and a like on YouTube and a 5-star review on Spotify and iTunes. And subscribe to those to get the latest on when a new podcast drops. So with that, I hope everybody has a great week getting back into the fold after the July 4th weekend. And we'll be back next week with plenty more.